take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Reverend Blackwell. Let me say hotep to my Africana Studies people, and let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I've always found goodbyes traumatizing. I said I find goodbyes traumatizing. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main. We're being hosted by our sister church there, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church, which is pastored by my good friend Reverend Dr. Della F. Hollinis. And we want to welcome you to our services on this Friday night. Excuse me, beginning at 7 p.m. And also this Sunday we have our morning worship beginning with our Sunday school at 10 a.m. and then our morning worship beginning as soon thereafter as possible. We'd like to start at 11 o'clock, but you know how it is when they go back there and start eating coffee and donuts. Might not get started until 11:15 or 11:20. But you understand. And anyway, we invite you to the service and we welcome you there. We're glad to see you come in the door and take a seat, and God will bless you before you leave out of the building. All right? All right. The offering which you are viewing is entitled It's Time, and it is a social justice presentation. Social justice because of the fact that we cannot serve God in a vacuum, and we cannot worship God in a bubble. You're going to have to be out here with us saints and sinners. And whatever else may be out here, you're going to have to we're going to have to deal with you, and you're going to have to deal with us as we attempt to glorify God and spread the good news of the gospel. And surely these are troublesome times, and we can only see what they're going to get worse and worse. I have a little tickle or phlegm in my throat, which I still haven't got rid of, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to go ahead and do our broadcast. And then make the devil is a lie. All right. We come from the environmental and the economic aspects in our approach to social justice because our environment impacts us whether we are aware of it or conscious of it or not. The recent train derailment down there in Palestine, Ohio, shows you how your environment can be impacted and you're not even doing anything about it. The folks in that town didn't own the railroad, they didn't own the trains, they didn't write the schedule, they didn't set the speed limit, but when the brakes went out on the one boxcar, it caused the entire train, as it were, to derail and spew caustic and toxic chemicals, fumes into the air, and those people down there are really having to deal with the aftermath of that environmental disaster. And so you see, your environment can be impacted, and you ain't had a chance to say anything about it. You know, like I said, the people there didn't control that railroad. They didn't write the schedule and all of that. They didn't maintain the track or anything like that, but yet they were impacted by the train coming down the track. And so that is why you have to be aware of your environment. And then the one of the other components as we deal with the fact not only in Flint, Michigan, but in Jackson, Mississippi, where the water table was corrupted and the like, and in that condition, situation, the people did not have control over the water supply, but somehow the water supply got poisoned because of the surrounding environments of the factories and things like that. And so that condition is an ongoing condition. And then that is on the natural side. And then on the political side, the people of Jackson, Mississippi are concerned because the state of Mississippi is trying to institute laws that would nullify and invalidate the mayor and the city council and all of the elected officials of Jackson, Mississippi, and put them under what would amount to another receivership, as they have done in some other states in this United States of America. And your environment, as I say, your political environment, you must always be involved, because that's the only place, that's the one place where you can have impact and effect. And you must have input, and you must raise your voice and say it loud when you don't like something, or when something that is being passed, when laws or legislation is being passed that is detrimental to you and your economy and to your environment as a whole. You have the right, and you must speak up. All right, we have put those two things on the table. Economically, because this is a capitalistic system, and because of the lasting effects and consequences and results of the ideology of racism and its devotees and its declensions, that what they have impacted our economy and our lives, this ideology of white supremacy that is still going on, and it's still strong, but it is losing power rapidly. But it's not going to go easily. You're going to have to kill it. And so with those thoughts on the table, let us look at the fact of reparations, as our California state representatives have just concluded their work, their sessions, and are now preparing to submit their findings to the governor of the state of California in June. I believe in reparations because slavery was a great harm to the African who was enslaved and served over here in the West, and whether he was he or she was in the islands, West Indies, or whether he was in Jamaica, he or she was in Jamaica. Let us not forget that women bore the brunt of slavery on both sides. They received great distress and harm from the slave master, and great distress and harm from their families, which were broken up a lot of times by the slave master selling their families off, selling their children off, and some of them which he had fathered by the enslaved women. So all over the Caribbean islands, the Caribbean, and even down in Cuba, and of course coming to Florida, and the slave ship that first landed at down from Port Comfort there, and we have suffered, in other words, from the ravages of slavery. And so we need to be made whole. And when I include, along with that ideology of white supremacy, the another 100 years, 150 years of Jim Crow, black code, segregation, and the like, which is still never been fully realized. In fact, democracy has never been fully realized in this nation. Of course, it's still an aspiration, but we all aspire to that. What is said in the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God with liberty and justice for all, may one day become an actualized reality. It is not right now. I can tell you that. With all of that in mind, I feel that the slavery coupled with the segregation that followed the golden period, as W.B. Du Bois described the Reconstruction era, that until this nation honors its debt to the enslaved and to their descendants, it can never live up to its full capacities or reach its full potential. All right. My reparation scripture is found in the Old Testament, picking up the reading in Deuteronomy chapter 15 and verse number 12, which says simply, "And if thy brother, an Hebrew man, or an Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee, and serve thee 6 years, then in the 7th year thou shalt let him or her go out free from thee. And when thou sendest them out free from thee, thou shalt not let them go away empty, but thou shalt furnish him or her liberally out of thy flock, and out of thy floor, and out of thy winepress, of that wherewith the Lord thy God hath blessed thee, thou shalt give unto them." And that is one. To give is a factor which we don't like to hear in capitalism, but God says give. He don't say let them rent it. He doesn't say let them borrow it. He said give it to them, and give it to them so that they may receive from your bountiful resources, from thy flock, thy floor, and thy winepress. And that's how God expected his people to treat those who had been enslaved to them, which were now less fortunate, because you would not sold yourself into slavery. And as they worked in that particular way, so they would make the formerly enslaved whole. As I said on last week's broadcast, there was no slavery in the Bible. The Bible does not record the type of slavery that was practiced here in the 13 colonies and later in the United States, which was chattel slavery, which means that a human being was reduced to a commodity or a parcel, and you could do with your parcel, remove your parcel, portable, take it where you will, because it was your property. And the Constitution protected that type of inhumane activity. But you cannot have slavery and freedom at the same time. As Abraham Lincoln said, you cannot live half slave and half free. You must become all one or all the other. And so that is why the Civil War was precipitated, because the followers of slavery wanted to secede from those who would not allow them to follow slavery. They had had their way all through the War of Independence and before, and up until 1860. Well, actually, the 10 years before that, when they overthrew the Missouri Compromise and signed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed them to just spread slavery everywhere, and which was cancer was a slavery. Slavery is a cancer. Let me get my words in order. Slavery is still a cancer, and slavery will always be a cancer. And if it's tied into white supremacy, that wretched, dastardly, demonic doctrine that says to the white people that you are better than the people who are black, and says to the black people you are inferior to the people who are white. That type of inequality cannot long continue to exist all over the world, which is what has attempted to be imposed upon the face of the earth. But thankfully, the blinders are coming off the oppressed, and the oppressed are rising up against their oppressors. The colonized are rising up against the colonizer. The British Empire is no more. The United Kingdom is no more. And soon the American Imperial Kingdom will be no more. The fact that nations like Saudi Arabia and Iran have signed a mutual peace pact agreement where they can reconcile themselves is not something that the titans of industry in the world, or especially in the United States or in Europe, want to see, because they have profited on the divisions of the people, keeping the people at each other's throats. And so, but now with the doctrine being undermined, divide and conquer being undermined, then of course this creates a different set of problems. And while we're on that, let's talk about the financial meltdown. How is it that with all of this money that was in Silicon Valley, but yet one of their leading banks had to go into receivership, and Silicon Valley Bank is no more. I don't know what the name of it is going to be now, but it ain't going to be Silicon Valley Bank, because it was taken over because they couldn't pay the people who had put the money in the bank. If the government had not stepped in, it probably would have gotten worse. And of course, when the bank can't put the money back in the depositor's hand that the depositor has put there, then that causes a panic. And it happened in 32 or 1929, what I'm talking about, that led to the Great Depression. And it has happened since then in several times. And it happened in 2009, and good companies like Countrywide and New Century and Washington Mutual and Wachovia Bank and American Home and Accredited and Northern Rock and AmeriQuest, any of those names sound familiar? They all went belly up in 2008 because of the financial crisis, which was precipitated because of the Lehman Brothers failure and because of the Bear Stearns failure. And remember, Bear Stearns had been around for 150 years. I believe it was the commentator that John Kramer, who emphatically said on national television, Bear Stearns is not going to fail. It's a 150-year-old company. And what did it do? It failed. It went belly up, as did Lehman Brothers. And if the government hadn't stepped in, AIG would have been, and AIG writes the insurance for a lot of the industries in the world. AIG, American Insurance Group, underwrites Fannie Mae, underwrites a great deal of governmental mortgage loans, FHA, VA, and the like. If you got a conventional loan, your house is underwritten by an insurance, which means if you don't pay the lender who loaned you the money to buy that house, you don't pay them for them, you don't pay them for whatever reason, they can still get their money from the insurance company. So they're made whole. You, on the other hand, will be in deep trouble, because now everybody's going to be coming after you to make them whole. They'll be on your back for the rest of your life, trying to get their money out of you, garnishing your wages and everything. Thank God they can't garnish your Social Security check, or they'll garnish that too. But if you win the lottery, naturally they're going to take that money because you have a debt. And so my point was that your house was insured, and what was insured about your house was that you would make that note every month, and that if you did not make the note, the lender would still be made whole. Well, that's why the government had to step in to keep AIG from going under, because that would upset the whole house of cards, not only in this country, but all the way over in Scotland. Royal Bank of Scotland had interest over here, investments over here, and just the whole economic system would have collapsed if the United States had let AIG fall, as AIG was headed. It was headed for the door, just like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns. And so the American economic system was said to be sound then, solid. George Bush said our economics system, and Mr. Greenspan said the fundamentals of our economic system are sound. And then he'd come back some months later and told the Congress, said, well, I had a flaw. It was a flaw in my formula. I didn't include the greed of human nature. My God. And he was the leader of the Federal Reserve. You remember Alan Greenspan? I can't think of the guy's name that took his place, who was up there. Oh, Miss Yellen. She's the one that's on the hook now, saying that the fundamentals are sound. Well, we've heard that song and dance before. You better watch your money. You don't hear me. And that's just another way of how God don't like ugly. Back in the days immediately after the 1865, they had set up for the newly freed slaves, formerly enslaved, the freedmen's, what they call a freedmen's bureau, and that freedmen's bureau included a freedmen's bank. And Oliver Howard and Supreme Court Justice Chase and a lot of notable figures were in consent and in agreement with to start this Freedmen's Bureau and start a Freedmen's Bank, where the formerly enslaved could earn some money and then put some money aside. So naturally it was made up of poor people putting their deposits in the Freedmen's Bank, but they had up to $57 million in the Freedmen's Bank at one time. But what happened? All right, the greedy financiers got word that the Negroes got money in their bank. Let's go over there and get control of the Negroes' money. And that's just what they did. Unscrupulous, dishonest people got appointed to the boards of directors, and before you know it, they were making risky loans, which in the end wound up forcing Freedmen's Bank into bankruptcy. But it wasn't because of the Negroes doing it. It's because of the white folks who claimed that they was in charge and knew what they was doing, but they ran the banks into the hole. And that cycle continues to repeat in capitalism. There's always a crisis coming in capitalism. that where the system has to eat up somebody or sacrifice some corporation or industry to the wolves, 5 minutes, in order for the entire system to survive. And so it was the Freedmen's Bank way back there then. And I don't know if any of you remember J.L. Hunt, the Hunt brothers. They tried a silver scheme one time. That was in my lifetime. And I just threw that out there because I was grown when that happened. But they tried to corner the market in silver. And Richard Nixon took us off of the gold standard. The dollar used to be backed by gold. You had to have so much gold in your vaults and in your possession. And this is a $20 bill, but this $20 bill used to be backed by gold. Then when Nixon, by the time Nixon left office in '74, he had took us off the gold standard. So it wasn't $20 gold backing up this. It was only the faith and credit of the United States of America that's backing this up. Problem with that is the world keeps changing and rearranging. And people that were allies yesterday are enemies today. So the petrodollars, well, oil was bought and paid for all across the world in U.S. dollars. But now, with Saudi Arabia and the BRICS countries, which means Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, being growing stronger, even as NATO is trying to get them in their organization, the people in Africa, a lot of the countries in Africa, like Namibia, Nigeria, and several others, they're not going, South Africa, that's one thing. They're not going with the United States because in South Africa, the United States fought for apartheid to continue. But it was the Russians and the Cubans who helped the Mandela and the ANC overthrow apartheid. And so they don't, when the United States come tell them to support the United States against Russia, they say, no sir, no way, because the Russians helped us, but we were fighting you. All right, it's time for me to wrap this up. You can't make this stuff up, folks, but keep in mind, this dollar you got may not be worth nothing a year from now. So if you got money in the stock market or money in them banks, you better watch it. You don't hear me. And the LAUSD employees are going out on strike because they need more money. Inflation have made everything, because Crisco oil has gone up. Western oil gone up, Gas have gone up. And so they need a raise. The district is fighting, giving them a raise. And remember, they only want to get them like a 2% or a 3% raise, whereas when they get a raise, they get 50% raise at one time and immediately. So they want to give the people kibbles, and they, meaning the management, wants to give the people kibbles and bits while they make a fortune. As the managerial part has always made a fortune, while the laborer gets kibbles and bits. So anyway, as I close, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, take a page out of the slave diary. If hard work had been meaningful, every slave coming out of slavery would have been at least worth $2 million. But they were poor when they got started, and they were poor when they finished. So if they don't, you working on a job and they don't want to pay you, take my advice and don't work for them. Thank you, Doc. We're out of here.
Yes, they do. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. You're right.